Alright, so this phone took a swim, went down about 15 feet for a few days in a lake. The owner popped out the SIM tray as recommended by Apple to get the process going, to hopefully help start drying it out. And one of the only few things that I would try to do, I would never try to subject this to power by plugging it in, but we could run a test real quick on the charge port to see if it or a line connected to it is affected by the water damage. And let's see what it has to say with regards to the lightning port. And we're coming back with everything good. Try that again. I saw some corrosion on the inside of the port. I'm wondering if I might have just knocked it away. We're looking good. The L1P and the L1N were reading OL before, but I think you can see kind of the corrosion in there. Before I turned on the camera, I saw that. So the first thing that we obviously should do is disconnect the battery. So we'll pop off the screen real quick. The adhesive seal on this 2022 is still pretty decent. It's holding on all right. But I'm curious to see, because it was just fished out of the lake yesterday. Curious to see how much water is still in there, if any. All right, screen's coming up. Let's pop off the top. And yeah, we still have a bit of moisture, especially right here next to the battery connector. Let's get that battery disconnected. Let's take out the screws and the bracket, and we'll disconnect the battery. And I'm going to go ahead and pop the display connectors, look at them. I don't see a whole lot of corrosion. And let's disconnect the proximity sensor. Okay, and then the screen will pop away. All right, the first thing I want to do is take the motherboard out just to give it an inspection. So I'm going to go ahead and take out all of the screws that correspond to taking the board out, and we'll disconnect the charge port. All right, now we can pop out the board and let's look for any signs of damage. I'm going to go under my microscope real quick and give it a good close inspection. All right, looking at it up close, it's still a little wet on the back here. That's just on top of it. I'm going to peel off this sticker here in a second, but looking around, that looks clean. All of the exposed components good so far. Up here looks good. Looks really good. And even around the connectors, battery connector's fine. Display connector, touch, home button, charge port even looks good. Wireless charger is good. Proximity sensor, rear camera, power button, everything looks intact. I don't see anything that's crazy corroded, which is a good sign. Now, what's really cool is this person did not attempt to power on the device, did not attempt to charge the device, didn't even put it in rice. They knew exactly what not to do, and they didn't do anything that would make my job much harder. So let's gently peel up this sticker. Oh, and that's looking really clean so far. And like I was going to assume down here, we're going to have an issue. I see a lot of issues down here with the charging circuit area, and that is something that we can probably fix. I'm going to take some isopropyl alcohol real fast, and we'll just drop it in this area, and we'll give it a good little scrubbing. Gentle scrub with a brush. See if we can knock off some of the corrosion. Under this IC, it's definitely got me concerned. We've got a bunch of capacitors here that are really dark on one side. It typically happens when there's a short on the rail. Alright, I'm not expecting to see any or a lot under this shield, but we do want to check it for the PMIC area. Typically when the charge port area gets hit, nothing else shorts out. And like I expected, everything looks super clean under this area. Alright, so let's run a few tests. Get out my multimeter. We'll go into continuity diode mode. Throw our red probe here on ground. We'll take our black probe and we'll go in. And I'm actually getting, right here where I thought I'd be getting a bad reading, I'm actually getting 0.55, which is what I typically see on these lines. 0.6, 0.3, that's good. 0.3, 0.56. So far, no shorts. That's really good. But given the state of that chip, I'm going to pull it real fast. Before I do that, we'll flip it over. I'm going to add some isopropyl alcohol to all of the foam pads here. And we'll pull off all of the foam. stickers. And now when we heat up this section of the motherboard, they won't shrivel up on us. And I know where the dot's going to be, this little triangle. By experience, it's going to be in this corner, but I'm just going to mark up the metal right here with a little bit of the tweezers just to remind myself. And we're going to take some flux and let's hit the area real quick with some hot air. Alright, so now that I've given it a reflow, I'm going to go ahead and hit it with some isopropyl alcohol now that it's cooled down. I'm going to try to... What that does with that flux is it cleans up the solder. Does that mean it's 100% under there? No, it might be fine. It might not be. I might still end up having to pull this, rebull it, or replace it. But I'm fairly confident now that the only thing wrong with this motherboard, given what I've seen, is going to be this. So if I do have to work on it, that's the area I'm going to have to pay attention to. I don't see any evidence of moisture getting into the CPU area. Typically, it'll get under both the shield and the other one. If that is the case, I may end up having to pop it off if it doesn't work, but I'd rather not pop off the CPU shield until I know I have to get under there. Now there's a little bit of corrosion around this connector. Nothing that I am concerned about as far as functionality here, but what it tells me is I should look at the display connectors, see if anything happened there. And here, looking at the display connector, we just have signs of a little bit of kind of shorting out. That would have happened while the phone went underwater. You can see there's kind of corrosion on the backlight. Nothing crazy. I'd be actually surprised if there's any issues at all. Now there is a black spot on this IC here, so the display might be toast, or that might have just been a spark from water hitting the motherboard there on one of the test points to a main line. Hard to say. And then one other notorious spot for water damage is the home button. So what I'm going to do real quick is just pop off the bracket for the home button, and we'll inspect the connector, and it actually really looks clean. So I'm not concerned about the home button. I'll just reconnect that and put it back. But now I'm going to turn my attention to the battery, because that's really the only other component that we need to test on this. And the proximity sensor assembly looks okay as well. Inside the charge port is quite a bit of corrosion, so it's a little concerning. But with a quick little flush of isopropyl alcohol and brush cleaning, it might be salt. I guess while I'm at it, I might as well get out the pocket lint as well. Nasty. You can see all of the evidence of the charging circuit area, leaving corrosion, discoloration on the charge port flex. See a little bit of corrosion on this part of the charge. Just hit that with some isopropyl alcohol and a brush real quick. One of the issues with cleaning up corrosion is if you clean it really well, you might end up kicking yourself because you can't remember where it all was when you have to go to refer to it again. I'll be curious if the power button works on this, because there's plenty of corrosion right there on the power button. So I will probably prompt this phone to boot without the power button with just tweezers. But let's go test this real quick. See if we have any life. Actually, what I'll do before we test it is I'm just going to go and look at the main power rails here real fast. Alright, here's one of them. So what can I test? One of these 3 points here, or one of these 2 points. That's actually the area that some of the sparks kind of look like they came from. So if we go over, I know this is sideways, but reading 0.3 on that, which is where I would assume it to be. You can actually test the battery lines as well. So it's going to be the inner one right here. We're getting 0.3 on it, and then this data line we're getting 0.54. And then this little guy right here, 0.54. We got ground there. So as we looked around here, none of the surrounding components that I tested, and I tested all of these guys, none of them were short. So yeah, we should be good to go and test it.
I wasn't really comfortable just leaving this be without knowing what was under it, so I decided to pull the chip and everything looked good, so we can go and put it back. And I had removed this one cap because it made it easy for me to access the side of the chip, so we'll put that back as well and make sure everything snaps back into place.
Alright, after working on that area a bit, I'm going to go ahead and test it real fast. See if we have to do any additional work for data recovery. Again, this is like so far what happened was best case scenario as far as if your phone is going to go swimming, what to do after. But motherboard is in. We're going to connect up the display and we'll connect up the battery. And I'm going to take my tweezers and we're going to prompt the phone to boot with the power button. Might be really dead, so let's go ahead and plug in the charge port. See what happens when we put power to it. Alright, and we're getting an Apple logo actually. Now that I just plugged it in quickly and see if it comes on. And it has. Do we have touch? I didn't assume we would given the condition of the display there, but the data's there, and that's all that matters right now. Alright, I have an iPhone 8 here that we can use real quick to test this display, just to rule out it being an issue with the display, seeing as this one went through water damage. So we'll go ahead and plug it in. Oh, and it looks like I need to charge this in 1 second. But while we let that charge, let's talk a little bit about the iBridge here that we're going to be using. So this pack comes with models from the iPhone 6 all the way through the iPhone X. Got an instruction manual here. And what I'm looking for out of all of these flex cables is going to be the connector for the display. As you can see right here, we got the iPhone 8G. This is going to serve our purposes because it's the same as the SE. So we'll take out this flex. And the reason this is so convenient is because we have these test points that actually have the data written next to them to a certain degree. But this allows you to test the voltage while the actual device is on instead of just testing continuity. Because you can't really get a full range of what's going on just by continuity. Most of the time you can get a good idea if you've got no power to a line or a shorted line or things like that with the multimeter. But reading voltage, you need power going to the device. So we'll also be using a multimeter. Now multimeters will have, now there are a variety of different multimeters out there. The lines we're going to be testing are a 1V1 line and a 1V8 line for the touch. So on most multimeters, the safe bet is to start with a 20 volts slot. You can go down to the 2 volts if your multimeter can handle it. If it can actually detect it, you might get a finer reading. But that's how we'll do it. You take and you place your, unlike continuity mode, you take your black probe and you put that on ground, and your red probe and you put that on the test point. And when you're in continuity diode mode, you swap them. Red goes on ground, black goes on the component you're testing. But we will need to connect up the display in order to do that. And this one came on, and as you can see, we have touch. All right, so it's obviously not an issue with the screen. It's an issue with the device. So let's go ahead and plug in the display. And this connects upside down. All right, and let's see. We'll connect up the battery here. I would normally connect up a power supply, but I think this battery has enough juice real quick to allow us to test. We'll go ahead and power on the phone. There we get our Apple logo. All right, so with the multimeter, we're going to be looking at the connector here. And here we're looking for 5.7, 5.7, 5.7, 1.8. All right, 1. So here we got 1.8, but we are not getting 1.8 on number 9. So let's go take a look at the schematic real quick on number 9. All right, so here we have our SE3 board. Let's find number 9. 9 is ground here, but what does that correspond to on the connector? All right, so if we go down on the motherboard up on the iPhone SE3, I've correlated 9 here with this pin. This is 31, but in counting it's number 9.
it goes over through this component, which looks like a capacitor, over to this potentially like resistor or filter. I can't tell because it just says X. And if we bounce around, we go basically between these two, or these three, the pin to here to here. So if we jump over to the other side of this filter, I'm assuming is what it is, we got another cap here, and we bounce around, we jump up to the PMIC, which is where we're going to get the power from. So what I'm thinking is happening is the line that connects the PMIC all the way down through these components is broken. Either this component is bad. It's not probably going to be a cap because there's no short. When a cap cracks or something, typically there's a short. Now there could be some cap leakage. That might be what's going on. But my first instinct is going to be looking at this component here. And then next, if we look, let's highlight the lines. Let's see. Looks like we've got a little trace that this connects to that shoots up and dives in and comes out here through the layers, all these different layers of the board. So, and that's the top layer, which is good. Let's go into the microscope and look at this guy here. All right, and one thing I can do is pull over to the SE2020 because it's going to have the same, basically the same connector. And this actually shows me that it is the 1V8 touch line. And in this particular model, it goes to this cap. And then if we hit next, it actually jumps around to the back of the board in a very similar area to where the water damage we have in this board is. Goes through this filter, so I'm guessing that this filter jumped over here like it does on the SE, and then when we click through that, of course there's a cap just like we were seeing here. If we were here, jump over, there's a cap, and then what it does is it goes from there, we go next, it goes to the PMIC. If we go over to the 2020 board, just because there isn't data yet on it, and we toggle, it goes up to the PMIC as well. So same line, it's a touch 1V or V18 line. So under the microscope, when we look, let's go down here and test. We've got this little tiny filter, and we have a connection across it. We do have the connection across it. So what I'm going to try to do is see what type of, do we get a voltage spike or something when we test it. And what's really nice, let's connect up the display connector. We are not getting the voltage when I test on that side of the filter. I believe it's this side we need to be testing. So given that that is supposed to be a filter anyway, what I'm going to do real fast is we're just going to bridge both sides of it and see if anything changes. For this, I'm just going to take a little bit of wick and I'm going to cut just a little few hairs off the end, and we'll just grab one of them, get a little bit of flux, get out our iron, and I'm just going to break off the excess. Alright, so we got this teeny tiny wire running across the top. We'll connect back up the display, the battery, and I still have no touch. So we jump to this guy here. We still have no touch. We have no power coming through this line, which basically leads me to one of two conclusions. Either something has actually happened with the PMIC, or the trace that connects this line to the PMIC is bad. This little via that goes through here. So that's what I got to figure out now. Alright, so let's go over what I've been able to determine. Continuity is fine on all of the pins. One of the 1V8 touch lines is not getting power. The filter and the two caps that are on this line look and test good. I don't see any corrosion on the vias or the traces or anything, but we are not getting power from the PMIC. Everything else seems to be working with the phone. So let me know in the comments, what do you think is the issue? Have you run into this issue before? This isn't like the SE2 where there are dead or broken traces.
due to bending and things like that for touch. This doesn't look like that at all to me. So let me know what you think in the comments below.